This is Ethan Morton from Purdue Men's Basketball, and you're watching Boilers in the Stands.
And there's the scene from Mackey Arena on Sunday afternoon after a big Purdue Boilermakers win over Michigan State and the Spartans, and Tom Izzo not being too happy with the outcome. But that's okay because Purdue rolls on 21-1 on the season, the unanimous #1 team in the country with a huge week of basketball here ahead of us for us Boilers fans. So welcome back, everybody. I'm your host, Gregory Braggs Jr. Alongside me, as always, is Kraig Bowers and Joe Jackson from his Feed the Post podcast. But you're going to be seeing Joe and Aidan on quite a bit more when it comes to our post-game shows and some of these interviews that we do and some of these midweek shows, as they are a part of the team that we're building here for Boilers in the Stands, as we call it here. Obviously, the umbrella being the Braggs in the Stands network kind of thing. Very excited for some of the things going on. I mean, Sunday was a huge day for the Boilermakers and even for some of the stuff we were doing. So we have a lot of new viewers, new subscribers, new, followers on our Twitter page and things like that. So welcome to what we're doing here. What you saw to start the show is what we're all about. We're about the fans in the stands, the paint crew, the guys that, go and wear this team on their sleeve, their heart on their sleeve for the Purdue Boilermakers. And that's what we are. We've, got some inside access to the press conferences and everything else, but we want to give you an inside feel of what it's like to be at Mackey Arena. For those of you that can't go to the games and can't experience this, we want to bring that to you here with also, some fun analysis, some good insight, and some great interviews. So that's my long-winded intro for the day. Kraig, how you doing tonight?
Hey, man, it's a great time to be a Boilermaker, As I was sitting at the game, when we did the post-game show the other day, we had Carter and Greg on from Sleepers Media, and Greg leaned over to me during the middle of the game, and he just said, man, isn't this just an awesome time for you guys? Like to be doing the show and to be a fan. And I said, man, it's been an awesome 2 years. Just an amazing time to be able to go and cheer them on, to be able to watch a national player of the year that, quite honestly, it has been as dominant as anybody in the sport since Zion, without a doubt. So it's just a real treat each and every day. Man, I've been in Mackey so many times, but it still just gives me chills and makes my hair stand up on my arms every time when the crowd goes nuts and we get that whose house, our house chant going. Just a great time to be a Boiler, Greg.
Yeah, it absolutely is. The house was rocking. They did the whiteout. We didn't play the big clip because we're going to save it for our special guest, David Jenkins Jr., who's going to be joining us in just a few moments as they were wrapping up a team dinner in West Lafayette. He's heading home and he's going to be jumping on here in just a couple minutes. But we didn't save the big highlight when it hit 123.2 decimals, in the stadium. The house was rocking the entire game, but at that moment it had hit its peak. David Jenkins burying a 3 just before the half. Tom Izzo gets hit with a tech as they're walking into the tunnel, after
which was just as great. Was just as great.
Yeah. I mean, you go from like a 11, 12-point lead to Purdue blowing it open there at 18, and then they get, the 2 free throws to start and then another quick bucket. Before you know it, they're up 22, before you can even – and Purdue every year seems like they have a tidal wave type game, and this was the one. Maybe they'll have some more, but this really was their tidal wave game. And, yes, 123.2, Michael, and we're going to be – playing that video here in just a few minutes when we introduce David Jenkins Jr., because we want to hear his thoughts on what that was like to be a part of that moment. The loudest recorded moment in Mackey Arena history. I'm not sure how far back this data goes. They have a meter right in front of media row that you can see from your seats, but then the guy right behind the meter has a computer with a more accurate reading. And I took a picture of a couple of those, and it showed like the maximum decibels of the day and all these different metrics that I have no idea what I'm looking at, but it was cool to look at. And so he had said to me in that moment, this was the loudest I've ever recorded, but there's a couple people that do it. So I wasn't sure if it was definitely the most. Now Purdue's put it out there that it is. The question is, I guess, how far back have they been recording that? But regardless, just a insane moment. And in an insane year, when you talk about these Purdue Boilermakers, they should have, for all intents and purposes, we thought this was going to be a rebuilding season. And they have extended their margin against the whole national landscape of college basketball and being the unanimous number 1 team in the country. And within the Big Ten, too. I mean, they're the closest team to them is the Northwestern Wildcats of all teams in second place in the Big Ten with only 3 losses. They take on Iowa in just a few moments here on the Big Ten Network. Illinois is up 54-50 with about 8 minutes to go in their game on Nebraska. So it's just really interesting to see how Purdue has separated themselves from the pack this season. So a lot of fun. And yeah, it is for us what we're doing here and building what we're, the coverage we're doing with Purdue is great. I mean, we had over 1 million engagements, literally, with all the different stuff we put out there. Some great guests on the post game.
And Joe's getting recognized at the game now.
Yeah,
he's famous.
Good. As
had
he
somebody just say hey after the game, which was cool. Appreciate you for doing that.
Did they ask for your autograph, Joe?
No.
Not autograph.
Just confirmed it was me, and then I was like, oh yeah, no, that's me from Braggs, and yeah, it was cool to meet, cool to interact for sure.
And you do your own work in your own right, and I think you were trending that direction even without what you're doing here, and that's why we're grateful for what you and Aidan are bringing here. We all bring a little something different to the table. Kraig's been covering and watching this team for a long time. He has a great Facebook page that just eclipsed 10,000 followers, a lot of passionate Boiler fans on there. Joe and Aidan, they have their Feed the Post podcast, and their analysis is second to none to me. I guess, Joe, you're going to have to answer this, because everybody's like comparing you to either Willie Berg or Caleb First. I don't know. You got a lot of Purdue comps going on.
I mean, I would say last year I thought I looked like First more, at least like this. Obviously, I'm not, 6'10" and jacked like him, but I had a little bit more curlier hair. And I think that's when you saw it a little bit more. It's not quite as curly. And then I assume the Berg is more just the redhead connection. Kind of, I feel like we have a somewhat similar hairdo.
Well, Michael Gordon
I
is
guess
a
that's
fan.
what
He
it
said,
all
just
is.
a good-looking guy.
Yeah.
I don't know who this is, the Facebook user. If you click the StreamYard link thing, then it'll pull your name up if you want your name up when you make comments, Mr. Facebook user. But he's asking, where's David? He texted me 10 minutes ago and said that he was just a couple minutes away from getting to his house and getting set up. So we're setting the table for David Jenkins Jr. Obviously, he had a big game on Sunday, and, we talked to him post-game. In the press conferences and a little bit afterwards to see if he'd be interested to come on. And he was very gracious about it, saying, yeah, absolutely. I'd love to. No problemo. And we're very grateful for that. So, as I was saying, we showed this to start the show, but the bench mob has really stepped up here lately. They're doing their thing, and David's kind of the leader of this as the veteran. They were calling him like the elder statesman, in the post-game pressers. And that's great. That's the role he should be in with this team. And I'm excited to talk to David about that because they need that veteran presence. They don't have many guys that are, obviously have the experience that he has. So now he's starting to get comfortable with his role. Talked about a lot about that in the post-game presser. He's getting a lot of questions. And it's great to see because Kraig and I have kind of been step for step in this. That's the kind of guy you need when you get to March. They hadn't been getting a lot of production from their bench for a few games. That kind of production that we've been seeing the last 2 games from David is going to be what separates them in March when you might have a team that locks up Braden Smith for a moment or two. You can have him come out, let him clear his mind. David Jenkins comes in and brings something different to the table. What do you think, Kraig?
Well, I think too, just the physicality that he can provide. He's just a bigger body at that position, right? We've played a few different guards that have tried to back David down and kind of post him up, and I think David the guy's been playing college ball for quite a while now, so he's had time to work on his body and build that body, and I think he provides a more physical presence there at times when we need it on defense. And the other thing about him is I saw somebody tweeted that David Jenkins hates shot clocks. I think it was Brian Newbert that tweeted that out, and I thought that was friggin' hilarious because, man, it seems like anytime that shot clock is winding down, he's a guy that can go out and get his own bucket. He's got that little hard drive where he goes right and stops on a dime and then spins and shoots a little fadeaway. And he hits it at a high clip. Sometimes I think he's a better shooter on the move, making a move with a hand in his face than he is with a wide open look. But the last few games, he's been knocking those wide open looks down too. And he's really close to hitting 2,000 points. I think he's 62 points maybe away. 69 points. 69 points away.
9 games to go. I mean, it counts in the Big Ten tournament too, correct? Or just every game, right?
I think every game, yeah. So
Jeremy's got the right quote here. Beats the shot clock like they owe him money. Yeah.
I do have the stats on that if you want them. I was going to ask him about it, but just a quick peek. Per synergy, Jenkins has had 97 possessions. So possession is like shot, turnover, free throws. 20 of those have come in the last 4 seconds of the shot clock. That's 22.5% of his possessions. There's only 6 players in the country that have like a higher percentage. But he's averaging 1.05 points per possession, which is equivalent to 51% from 2 pretty much, and 34% from 3, which is in the 87th percentile. So he's way up there in shots coming under 4 seconds in the shot clock, which
absolutely
checks out.
Before we move on to the next segment, please, everybody that's tuned in, please hit that like button, subscribe to our channel, because without further ado, we want to bring on our special guest for the night, a guy that rocked the house at Mackey Arena. And there it is, 123.2 decibels on the Richter scale. You about blew the top off Mackey Arena with that shot. David Jenkins, welcome to the show. Appreciate you coming on here tonight.
Man, you can hear me?
Yep.
Appreciate you guys for having me on here, man. I'm excited.
Yeah, well, we appreciate you having us, or you appreciate you carving out some time. When you watch that video back, and I'm sure you've seen it more than a few times here in the last couple of days, what goes through your mind? What was that moment like for you?
Man, it's actually pretty crazy because when the play, before I even got to the play, I think Mason was taken out of bounds, and I told Braden, I said, Braden, look for the indirect. That kid got eyes in the back of his head. He sees everything. So, it's funny because he started to drive, and then as soon as I started to lift, I said, he's going to hit me. Because he always usually when he comes up the ball screen, he always looks for the lob for Z, or he always looks kind of behind him for the indirect pass. So I got the ball, and, man, I don't know what it is with the late shot clocks at me in this year, but – yeah, I mean, I don't know. It's just kind of like I'm that much more laser focused in. But as soon as it started to come off my hands, I said, it's good. And, seeing the crowd's reaction, how loud it was, man, it was second to none. And then I had to make sure, for whoever watched the video, as soon as I made the shot, I had to go show love back to him, man, because, he's just a great point guard, man. And, obviously that shot ain't nothing without a good pass. So credit to Braden, too.
Yeah, I mean, talk about that. I mean, the thing that was talked so much about in the postgame presser was how together you guys are. You spoke on that, saying how rare, it isn't something that you take for granted because that's not on every team. Obviously any team, you guys are together a lot, but not every team hangs out as much as you guys do. Talk about what is it that you got that has brought, you've been on a lot of different teams, through your collegiate career and your journey here to West Lafayette. What makes this so much different? Why is it that you guys are so close, that you root for each other the way you do?
Yeah, man. I think it just all has to really do with the lack of we don't have guys who have a bunch of big egos on this team, man. And I think it really means something when you get on teams with guys who have high ego. It can kind of start to distort the team a little bit. I genuinely think everybody on this team just wants to win, and they want to win at a high level. Our first goal from the beginning of the season was Big Ten championship. And, some of the teams I've been on, some of the guys be like, I want to get to the NBA. We're starting to think about their careers, their own individual success. And, it's just like, okay, well, what about, the team goals and things like that. And that's from day one what everybody preached was a Big Ten championship. And so I think the fact that everybody's on the same page with winning, and then the fact of, like I said in the press conference, how close we are off the court, I really think it's essential. I've been on teams where we're really close off the court and we're a lot better. And I've been on teams where, we weren't on. It was kind of groups and cliques of team players, who would hang out with each other. But that's not how we are on this team. We all hang out with each other, whether that's going to the movies, hanging out, or getting something to eat, or just simple things like that. Like I literally just got done with team dinner. We do that, before every game day, and I think it's all important, man. So I think that translates to how much we win on the court.
Yeah, David, really loved watching you play, and the last two games especially seems like you kind of found your groove. One of the things that Painter talks about is, coming off the bench, if you're not necessarily getting a ton of minutes all the time, that sometimes it's hard to get in a flow and get into a rhythm. You've had stops earlier in your career where you averaged 16, 17, 18 points a game, and then maybe a little bit different role here for Purdue. How is that adjustment coming into the game on less minutes and maybe not having the same volume of shots that you had for you to try to kind of get locked in to still hit those shots and be efficient?
Yeah, man. Just to piggyback off what you said, my freshman year at South Dakota State, I averaged 16. Sophomore year was 19.8, 20. When my year at UNLV was 15, and last year was 9 or whatever the case may be is, so I'd be lying if I say it's easy to come in and not be, kind of who I was before. And that's why I'm still kind of adjusting in this role. That's why, my play hasn't been to its best the beginning of the season and all the way up in a little bit until now. But I'm starting to progress a little bit. One thing I try to do basically is kind of just try to find my niche defensively. I think that's why I've been playing a little bit because Payne's been trusting me on some of the best guards on, the opposing teams. And and certain things like that. And, and that's kind of, I kind of have started to figure out the more defense I'm playing, he's starting to lead me in the game, which has opened up some of my shots because, obviously Zach attracts so much attention with double teams and things like that. But really, man, just trying to find my niche in this role and getting comfortable with it. And I think I've been doing that these last few games. But, and again, just earning that trust again with Painter and all of my coaches as well. And that's certain things. But it's not easy, but I think I've kind of have been trying to find my role within it, and comfortable within my role. And I think that's something I've been trying to do, and I'm going to keep trying to do that moving forward.
How hard is that? You talk about it started on the defensive end here, and that's not something you necessarily were known for at the other schools. How to come to Purdue? It's not like you guys are just playing man to man. There's as much system as they run on as Purdue runs on offense. You guys have a system on defense too, and responsibilities. How hard was that for you to catch on to everything that was your responsibility within that role?
Yeah, hard. Like you said, none of my years I was known for a defensive player. I was always a scorer. That's usually the way I was recruited. But I just kind of knew coming into a program like this, at this caliber, and especially being in the Big Ten, for myself, I wanted to play D because, man, I just don't want to get embarrassed by some of these good guards in the league, and I'm just like, well, I'm going to have to make sure I guard. And I think that, when he started to notice that I can do that, obviously Painter knows as well that I wasn't known for that as well. But when he noticed I could do that, then he started, late game and certain things started to put me on some of the guards. And I just think that what I started to learn throughout the season is, okay, well, I'm obviously not scoring it well. I'm not shooting it how I usually shoot it. But it seems like whenever I'm playing really good defense on the guards and, sticking to the defensive game plan, that he starts to leave me in. And I've noticed that, and even some of the games when I'm not making the shots, he's still leaving me in just for defensive purposes, because obviously we got guys like Zach who's going to score, Fletcher's going to score, Brady does his deal, and things like that. So, but having guys, like Morty, obviously he doesn't score a bunch, but he does everything that we need. So, but every team needs dudes who's going to guard the other team's best guards or best centers or things like that. So, I think that's something I've learned throughout this whole year, really.
Yeah, for sure. I'm kind of curious, going into the summer and that, you say, you're going to transfer. What was kind of the process with, getting in contact with Painter, or, them getting in contact with you? And when you came here, were you knowing that the role that you're in now could be a possibility? Or was it just, you just wanted to come play at Purdue and you'll figure out the rest later?
Great question. So this was the longest I've ever been in the portal. I got in the portal as soon as season was over at Utah. So March sometime. I didn't commit here till late June at some point or something like that. I didn't get here till July 1st. All the guys been here, and so how that worked is, I was getting recruited by good schools, but nothing felt like, okay, this is really it. A lot of schools where I felt like I could go get 20 or 30, a lot of good high majors where I'm like, okay, but this one this is a really good school and they're consistent. Painter kind of reached out to me later on in the process. As I was actually getting ready to commit to a couple of different schools, he called me and I'm like, okay, this is interesting. I had my doubts at first. I'm like, okay, I know Purdue. They're usually known for their big man. They're winning, yes, and I also heard they got like 1,000 different sets in play. So I'm like, that kind of scares me. So, but I kind of talked through it with him a little bit and kind of tell him things. And, he made me comfortable. And he's a pretty, black and white type of coach. He tells you everything in the real. And the second part of your question is, no, I'm going to be honest with you. I came because I honestly thought I was going to be the starting point guard. And I honestly thought that it kind of be like a Zach on the inside and me on the outside type of role. And that was what was preached to me. And that was what could have happened. But Braden came in and Braden was good, like really good. you know what I mean? And, yeah. And here's the difference between me and him as well. Like Braden been playing point guard his whole life. That's never been me. I've always been the scoring kind of guard. So when he came in and brought some of his point guard skills, that's what kind of led him to the starting point guard spot. And credit to him because he's good. You know what I mean? And it's funny because in my interview the other day, I was telling the press how I had sent Braden a text like last week, a week and a half ago, really long message, just how proud I am of him, man, because it's not easy to just come in from high school, Fletch too, coming in high school and do what they're doing at this high of a level, especially at the Big Ten. and I preach to him every day how proud I am. I have no jealousy, envy of him coming in and starting, man, because he deserves it. And I know how I was once as a freshman as well. So, and I want to make sure he's ready for all the adversity that he's going to have to go through, all throughout his next 4 years. So, but yeah, that was kind of the process. Paint reached out to me later on, and then, but like I said, I committed originally because I'm like, okay, the position that is, I was going to potentially be the starting point guard and be, one of the leading scorers, but obviously nothing ever always turns out how it's supposed to be. But man, I'm happy, man. Like, this is the best team I've ever been a part of. Paint believes in me, my coaches believes in me, and it's a good situation.
Well, I think everybody that's watching this and the three of us can speak to this. That shows amazing humility and maturity, and for you to be humble like that and to be a leader like that. That's what this team needs. They were giving you crap for being the elder statesman in the post game presser, but and that's great that's what the role you've come into here, because you guys obviously have, I'm sure, bigger goals in mind here going forward, and you're going to be a huge part of that. So I got to give you a lot of credit for seeing the bigger picture when it comes to that and putting your ego to the side. Go ahead, Kraig.
Yeah, one of the things that I just wanted to bring up in relation to that, in many ways, and they were kind of giving you heck about being the old hat or whatever it may be. So in many ways, you're the older player that's been around, played a lot of games in college, and have that experience as a leader and whatnot. But on the other hand, you're coming in and learning what everybody has said is just a massive playbook, kind of on the same schedule as Braden and Fletcher. So, like, how was that going through that process of learning Painter's playbook and, in one way, kind of being the experienced guy giving advice, but also learning that stuff at the same time as those other guys?
So when I first came here, like I said, I had heard about all the sets, so I was scared and nervous about that. I remember when, even before we got to the sets, just all the certain things that they were teaching us. I'm like, man, I feel like a freshman right now. Like, I feel like I'm, Braden or Fletch right now. Then we got to the plays. And so, typically I would say coaches have between 20, 30 sets usually, that you usually run throughout the year. So we have 5 families of sets, and every family has about 20 sets, I'd say. So that's, it's 100 sets right there. And then you throw in out of bounds and sideline out of bounds. So you get up to 120 or whatever sets. So, to remember all that was difficult. But what we would do is pre-season 2 days a week at 6 a.m., we would have walkthroughs of our plays. Just go in, walk through our plays and kind of go through it. And honestly, at the time, I'm like, dang, this is terrible. It's 6 a.m. Who's trying to do that? But now I'm like, man, that was helpful, man, because I wouldn't be able to get on the floor if I didn't know any of these sets, because Paint is serious about knowing the plays and knowing what you're doing. And but there were plenty of times where I'm like, man, I feel like I'm Braden or Fletch or, who are all the freshmen right now, because I don't know anything. And just like I said, some of the terminology that Paint and all the coaches preach and some of the things that I've never even been taught, I'm like, man, this is crazy. So, but that was kind of the process. And like I said, at first learning the sets was scary. I'm like, man, I'm never going to play. I don't know these plays. It's funny because right before the first game or so, they gave us a sheet that it was a quiz basically of all the terminology and all the plays, and you had to get like a 90 and above, and obviously if you get like a 60 or 70, you don't want to look bad in front of Coach Painter. So I was studying that, and man, I got like a 90, I don't know, something, but at the end of the day, it all planned out the way.
Yeah. Hey, people were excited for you to be on tonight. Normally when we post our show, there might be like 1 or 2 comments, like looking forward to it. There were like 30, 40 people posting questions for you, like as soon as we posted that thing advertising it. So if there was any doubt, Purdue fandom loves you, David.
Yeah, we had Michael Gordon in the chat an hour before the show started talking to you. Seems like the difference between the early season now is that you are and they are letting you seek out your own shot. I love your step backs, crossovers, etc. Keep making your, I don't know what OP is, but
appreciate it, Mike. Thank you.
Yeah, you certainly do have, a lot of game, and I think, 1,900 and whatever points speaks to that. You talked about, learning this playbook, and it was funny because when we had Ethan Morton on, he said, Coach Micah Shrewsbury, that's at Penn State, he called all the plays when he was here. Matt Painter didn't call any, and he was like, I wasn't sure how much, Matt Painter had in his bag until he showed me, and now he's learning that this is where they're all getting it from, the Matt Painter coaching tree. And the other thing that's kind of happened here in the last few games, it's not just you coming off the bench. For a minute, there was a little bit of a lull, however you want to describe it, as far as production coming off the bench. Now it seems like you guys are all coming in bunches between your whole unit. Sure. And I wanted to talk a little bit about Brandon Newman, because I feel like, obviously TKR is also starting to ascend. Mason Gillis, we all know the glue guy that he is, but, Brandon Newman's a guard, and I want to know about your relationship with him and how you've seen him kind of fill into his role and how he's been doing here, especially the last few games where it seems like he, along with all you guys, have started to ascend.
Yeah. Brandon's actually probably the closest guy I am on the team with. I just see a lot, and that is because I see a lot of myself in him. And when I was kind of younger, and a freshman and sophomore and kind of a junior as well, Brandon, he wants to do good, and he wants to do the right thing. He wants to play and all this and that. And he is such a hard working guard. Like he's always getting extra work in, whether that's shooting or, learning different things with film and things like that. So he's very determined. The thing I always preach to Brandon, I said, man, sometimes this being simple is the best thing you can do, and whether that's, sometimes you don't need to take the extra dribble. Sometimes just take the easy catch and shoot shot and things like that, because, that's how a lot of guys, I was telling him, a lot of guys are getting paid just by making catch and shoot 3-pointers, man. There's guys in the NBA who could sit right in the corner, sit right at the top of the key, shoot, catch a 3-shot and get, do whatever, So I preach that to him all the time. And I think sometimes he tries to make it difficult on himself because he thinks that it has to be a harder shot to make it look better, just certain things like that. But man, he's really filling into his role. One thing, Brandon, he's really good defensively, and he's a really good rebounding guard as well. He's really got height, 6'4". He's athletic. He's long. But I think that he keeps himself in the game because, like I said, how well he defends, and he can go in and guard some of the taller guards. And I think Brandon, at some point here, I don't know when, but Brandon's really going to take off. He's he's one of the best shooters I've ever been around my entire life. And like I said, obviously me, him, and some of us off the bench been having our ups and downs, but it can't rain forever. And I think a lot of us are going to start coming out of that, especially some of us coming off the bench. I think our starters are doing a tremendous job right now. But man, I love him. I love Brandon with everything I have, man. I think he's the best person ever off the court as well. That's why I think I'm really so close to him. So I'm gonna try to do what I can as far as staying on him and preaching all that. But I think he's gonna really come out big for us.
And you got to give him a lot of credit for knocking a couple games now. He's had to knock down some free throws to ice the game when he hadn't taken a free throw the whole year. And I don't know how familiar you are with.
That ain't easy to do, man.
Not easy to do. And I don't know if you're familiar. You came from Valparaiso High School. Yep. They're known for this. They had a coach that is like one of the legendary free throw shooting coaches in the whole country. And Valparaiso High School players, they can shoot free. They can shoot, but they can shoot free throws with the best of them.
Got some good tips from that coach.
Oh, he does. I mean, you see it with his form, right? I mean, he's as good as it gets. Go ahead, Joe.
Yeah, I was, you've been your third, fourth school now. But your first 2 years, you played with Mike Daum, and now you're with Edie, two elite bigs. For anybody that doesn't know, Mike Daum was a bucket, more of a stretch big type. But was it like playing with both of them? Obviously, they're way different in how they get their points and productive. But was it like playing just with two pretty elite bigs?
Two completely different bigs. Just to touch on what you said, I think Mike hit 3,000 points if I'm not mistaken. But
I think so.
Yeah, he. So Mike. Okay, so the thing about playing at South Dakota State was I was able to get to the rim and do those things a lot easier because Mike was always on the perimeter. He was kind of like a 6'10" guard essentially. At the time, Mike was also shooting probably about 45% from the three. Like he could literally shoot it like just as good as any guard, So what we would do is we would always play two mans and he would always pop, and they would have to worry about me too because at the time I'm shooting it really well too. So the big might be late and they too late to recover back to him, so he could just shoot the ball at a high level. He averaged 20 something points like 3 years in a row. He's just the craziest guy to play with. Well, compared to Zach, like just a dominant force. Like you throw it into him, it's an automatic bucket. He's 7'4", 300 pounds, and he attracts so much attention down low. Almost every game, if a team was smart, they would double him. But he gets double teamed, and one thing I really love about Zach and how selfless he is, like he has no hesitation when someone goes and doubles to kick it out to the shooter. He has no hesitation at all. And that's one thing I really like about him, and same thing with Mike. But man, like being able to play with two bigs like that, it opens up a lot of scoring for yourself. But two, it's just dope to see. Like it's really dope to see. I remember I said this in my press conference too. I was messing with Zach before the game. I'm like, man, you've been destroying all the before we played Michigan. It's like, man, you've been destroying all these dudes, man. Like, well, let me see what you do versus Hunter, then I'll see if you're real, you know. And he went out there and just went right at him right from the get-go. And I'm just like, after the game, we beat him. I'm like, man, you are legit, man. Like, damn, you know. So messing with him a little bit, but man, he you know, to credit to him, man. Like he might get National Player of the Year. Like I would love that. Nothing more to see that, but being able to play with those two are definitely a blessing.
Yeah, I mean, Zach Edey's certainly down, especially on Sunday. He dropped 38, and TKR's on the bench begging Painter, like, let him stay in to get for his 40 burger. I mean, you just don't see that much in college basketball. And I mean, I think everybody at this point knows Zach's story as far as being a late bloomer into the basketball world. And he's just so skilled. He's not just big, as everyone keeps saying. And it's certainly
no. There's a lot of big 7'2", 7'3" dudes out there who can't get 40, you know, like in 38s and 35s. Like he's doing it almost every night, man. So he ain't just big.
You know, one of the best plays of the game was this one where Braden's coming down the court. He drops it off to First, who drops it off to Edey. Talk about the ball movement on this team, the unselfishness. You know, it was standing out early on when you guys were beating the brakes off Duke and Gonzaga and West Virginia. Like the ball movement was just so much of a joy to see as just a basketball fan, not even a Purdue fan. And talk about that, the selflessness on the court. You talk about it off the court as far as being there for each other, but talk about that selflessness and wanting to pass up the good shot for the great shot on the court.
Yep. You know, two things to that. Like, it's kind of funny, you know, before the season, everybody was kind of doubting us because, you know, we may not be the most talented team. You know, we lost J.I., you know, just all the really talented players, man. But, you know, I knew we were going to be good just because of, like, I keep preaching how together we were and how close we were. And we kind of got close really quick. It's kind of like everybody got on campus. As soon as everybody got gone, everybody's talking mess to each other and things like that. I'm like, okay, we're going to be really good. And I think our ball movement has to just do with that all, man. Like, I know it, you know, it kind of sounds corny or whatever, but we're just so close. It's like, it's almost like looking at, like, if I was playing out there with all of my brothers, right? Like my blood brothers. And I'm like, okay, well, I want to see him succeed. Well, I think that's just how we are. I think we look at each other all as blood brothers and we're like, well, man, I want to eat, but I really want to see him eat, you know? So it's just like, I just think that kind of all goes in with, how well our ball movement is and why we move the ball so well, because we're genuinely want to see the next person succeed. And I also think that's just why we're such a good team, man. We're not the most flashiest or the most talented team. Like, we played a lot of teams that have more talent than us, but we are so together and so connected on the court because of how genuinely happy we are to see the next person succeed, man. And I think that is why our ball movement is the way it is. We will literally, I know for sure, I always pass up my shots because I'm like, well, this guy got an even better shot. I know we all do it. We all do it. Like, you know, so it doesn't matter who it is on our team. We'll all do it for each other because we want to see the next person succeed.
Yeah, and here's Fletcher Lawyer dropping a dime off to Caleb First. Yeah, it's a lot of fun. Like I said, as a basketball fan, I wouldn't, even if I wasn't a Purdue fan, you know, this is something to me is must-see TV. There's a lot of special things going on. Zach Edey obviously being at the forefront of that, but even beyond just how you guys are together and everything. Go ahead, Kraig.
Yeah, on the broadcast the other day, they said that you have a goal to eventually become an analyst and be on TV. Is that right?
Yeah.
Have you you know, Painter always talks about the connections and what it means to graduate from Purdue, to be on the Purdue team, and you look out there and you see Robbie Hummel doing his thing, you see Raphael Davis doing his thing. Have you had a chance to connect with those guys at all? You know, how as you look at that goal moving forward, like what's that path like?
Yeah, I talked to both great dudes, by the way. You know, and they kind of just walked me through the process of it. Obviously, they all say that it helps that you played at this level, you know, and with the transition, you know, because they look for guys like that who played at this level, who know about it and things like that. But, you know, for me, I kind of learned it when I got my degree in communications, and, you know, I'm like, okay, I like to talk, man. I like to talk about things that I like and love, so I can write papers and have great content in it. And I say, okay, you know what? Basketball analyst. And then I see guys like Stephen. And it's funny, when I was at UNLV, I had met Stephen A. Smith, got his contact, and he's kind of been walking me through the process as well. So it's kind of like it's a dope thing, and it's because you're still around the game and you get to talk about it and everything you see. You get to travel still. Like, I think it's a cool gig. So when it's all said and done, when I'm done with Purdue, I'll play basketball for wherever, how long as I can, and then I'm gonna definitely go into analyst.
Because people were asking in the chat, no thoughts into coaching more in the media world?
Yeah, that's what a couple people have been bringing up to me. Do you want to coach? You looking into coaching? I think I'm still like going back and forth there. Like, I like it. I'm trying to see how I'd be as a coach. I have low patience and things, and I think you gotta have patience. Yeah, man. Like, when I'm sitting here and I'm watching paint sometimes, and some of the crazy things we say to him, I'm like, how does this guy just be like? How is this guy taking this thing? Like, okay, like, So I don't know how I would be at it. I have to think about it a little more, but I just think sometimes what makes the best analysts is how some of them have no filters, and they just kind of say crazy things sometimes, but it's funny, and and I think you can do certain things like that. So that's why I kind of like push myself a little more towards that.
Yeah, I mean,
we'll have more of a filter than dockage, though. Okay,
yeah,
that'll get you in trouble.
That's true.
Yeah, I was gonna say, because a good friend of this show, and he's on a lot with us. We tried to get him on tonight, but he had his son's basketball practices, Bobby Riddell. And I was like, what's more important, kids' basketball practice or this world-renowned podcast?
Right.
But he chose the kids' practice. That's fine. But if you do,
Bobby Riddell, just to make that clear, that not Dan Dockage. Bobby Riddell is a friend
Bobby
of the program.
Yeah, Bobby Buckets. And if you do end up an analyst, just don't get caught on TV with this kind of, don't get caught like this, because then we post it on Brags in the Stands, and we never let him live it down. He'll probably watch it later and be like, God damn, man. Oh, man. So, when you're talking about the rest of this season, the hype of being number one in the country, a lot of the talk early on was like, last year it was the first time in program history the team reached number one in the country. Now this year they get back. A lot of fans weren't expecting it. Maybe you guys did going into the season, but a lot of fans thought middle of the pack, Big Ten, somewhat of a rebuild year. And now all of a sudden you're right. They're right. You guys as a team are right back where you were last year. And I know you weren't here, but talk about that pressure of being the hunted, being that top dog in the Big Ten and nationally, unanimous number one team in the country this year. And then obviously, do you know anything about this Purdue IU rivalry that's looming? And I almost am hesitant to bring it up because I know there's a game to be played tomorrow, but all of Boiler Nation will want to hear your thoughts when it comes to the pressure, but specifically that IU Purdue matchup that's coming up on Saturday too.
So, obviously, the way I look at it, man, if I'm on an opposing team and I'm getting ready to play the number one team in the country, man, I'm trying to take them out. So the way when I look at it like that, I'm like, hey, we're going to get every team's best shot no matter what. Kind of the same when Rutgers came in here and beat us at home, and they haven't been playing as good since then, and I'm just like, well, dang, where was that when they were playing us, so, but we're going to get every team's best shot, and that's just how it's going to be. And it in some ways it's pressure, but man, it's ball. And we just know one thing that we always say right before we're getting ready to play, man, just stick to what we do. And I know that's cliche, but the one thing we do really well every game we usually have won is when we're just playing harder than the next team, man. Even if you think about it, the beginning, even mid of the year, we were shooting the three ball, not that good. We weren't shooting really good as a team in general, but we were winning all those games because we were just flat out playing harder than everybody. We're first to the floor. We're first, we're getting kills, which we call 3 stops in a row. We're doing some of those things, and I think it all just kind of translated to some of those winnings. And I think that's kind of one thing we know that if we keep doing that, then we're going to stick to being the best team in the country and having good wins. And to touch on that IU game, man, it's funny because I messed up today. I went and talked to Coach Johnson. I'm like, yo, how's this IU game going to be? And I'm like, what? He was like, man, we play tomorrow, man. I'm sorry. Yeah, you're right. My bad. But, I'm like, and obviously we can't look past nobody, because Penn State, they're good. And Shrewsbury, I don't know about him much, but I do know I heard he's a mastermind with plays and things like that. So we got to Penn State going to come here ready to go. And we got to make sure we're on our A game as well. We know we're going to get their best shot. But, that rivalry game, man. Honestly, I can't talk much about it because I have a little feeling because they all tell me every day and tell me, Dave, this is gonna be the craziest thing ever. But man, I'm so excited for that game as well. And how much how far the rivalry went back and things like that. But it's gonna be good and fun.
Yeah, no, for sure. I'm looking forward to it a lot. Even the Penn State game tomorrow too. I love watching Penn State personally. Going back to you, but like, what was it like catching whether it was a shoulder or an elbow from Mason Gillis, who's just absolutely built? Like, what was that like?
Dude, listen, I still have a messed up eye, still,
Dude.
and they told me it's going to take however long, but man, I'm starting to think this is permanent. But man, but so it was in practice. We were in sideline out of bounds, and I think TKR was throwing the ball out of bounds, and he threw it kind of off to the side, and I had to run and go get it. And as I'm running to go get it, I see Mason flying at me. I said, oh, boy. Because I said that because, like, 3 weeks before that, I was going up for a layup on a fast break. And Mason was coming to try and block my shot, but he wasn't even close and, like, undercutted me. And we both just collapsed. And so it was giving me flashbacks as I was running for the ball. And I seen him. I said, oh, this is going to be bad. And I couldn't stop. He couldn't stop either. And, Mason's big old hard head, his head split me open. And see, at the time, it was okay. It was just a split, man. And then I went home. I got stitches right after. I went home, took a nap, woke up, and it was just huge. And then as the days went on, it started to get black all the way around, just black. And, and then obviously I had to miss the game. And then I had to go get plastic surgery because I had a big blood clot that wouldn't go away. Yeah, a lot of people don't know this stuff. And, so I had to do that. And then I was recovering. And then my eyes started to finally open a little bit. But like I said, man, it's obviously still a little black here and a little puffy here. So I'm going to be dealing with this for how long. But Mason, he goes so hard, man. You don't even have control it sometimes. It's funny.
Well, Isaiah Thompson last year had a black eye to start the year. And I'm pretty sure it was from Mason. It's been so long, I can't remember. But, yeah, I think Mason's doing this every year. It's like a initiation or something.
Yeah. So he – I don't know if you guys noticed, but Brandon also has a big old gash here. In practice, Mason was driving to the hole. Brandon was guarding him, and he kind of dipped his shoulder and split Brandon open, had to get stitches and all that.
This man is a menace.
Last year, they told me same type of thing happened. He split open Carson. He's our walk-on. He split him open up here, and he has a big old scar here.
And then Zach Eady has a scratch on his arm. Was that from Mason too?
Wait, which one?
Zach Eady has a big scratch on his arm.
Listen, I don't know for sure, but if I had to take a wild guess, I'd say
it is.
It's like he enjoys it at this point.
Dude, he owes you guys something there. I mean, this is crazy.
I need steak dinner or something, man.
All right, go ahead, Kraig. We're going to wrap it up here, but Craig's got one more, and then we have one from the chat.
Sure.
Having played in the Summit League, Mountain West, and Pac-12, and coming to the Big Ten, most of us talking to you right now, I try to watch college basketball from all conferences, but a lot of people listening primarily are Big Ten fans and primarily focus on the Big Ten. I guess I'm just curious about the difference in arenas and the fans, that type of stuff. What's the Big Ten compare like to like the Pac-12 and maybe some other places?
Yeah, so obviously, the Summit League is smaller, mid-major conferences. So all the leagues, schools are 6,000, 7,000, 8,000, at the most. Maybe one or two schools that got good atmospheres. We were one of them. We would usually almost sell out a lot of the games. Big fan support out there. When I got to UNLV, the thing about UNLV is they're so used to the 90s Rebels, with Big Dog and all of them and how good they were in their run. So, if we don't get to that, then, the fan support is kind of low. But as far as the arena, it was 18,000, 19,000. So it was big. So it was hard to fill anyway. But wow. The Mountain West, it was pretty common. You got San Diego State. They would sell their games out. Boise State had pretty good fan support. New Mexico. It was pretty good. When I got to the Pac-12, it was kind of low. The only teams that would have really big crowd, I would say, was Arizona. When we played them, they sell it out. And it's rocking in there. It's fun. I can't call any other game really being crazy, to be honest with you. Just decent. And then but obviously within some of those schools, we went and played bigger schools. Like when I was at South Dakota State, we played Kansas, and it was crazy. Island Fieldhouse is ridiculous. Yeah. And some of Wichita State was good, and some other schools. But the Big Ten, what's crazy to me is it's like every game we've played has been like pretty packed. And pretty rocking, I would say. When we were at Nebraska, that was one of the loudest games we ever had. And they're like, I don't know where they're at in conference right now, but it was ridiculous. Michigan wasn't all the way packed, but it was loud. Ohio State was rocking. Every road game we've had has been pretty packed. Minnesota, it was okay, not really, but I think the atmospheres in these conferences are crazy. And some of the guys were telling me, when we go to Wisconsin, it'll be good. Obviously, IU is going to be good. We don't go to Illinois this year, but they told me it's rocking in Champaign. Like, it's obviously going to be fun. Playing at this it's like second to none playing in the Big Ten. And I'm not saying that to be biased, but if you really look at, if you look at from top to bottom, I think we're the best like conference in the country or up there at least. A lot of physical, big, good teams, man. And honestly, I wish I could have played in the Big Ten since all the way from my freshman year because I love seeing these atmospheres.
Well, and you got to play in the Palestra too, against Penn State. What was that like? Right. It's like hallowed halls.
Yeah, it was 8. I think we sold it out. It was only 8,000, but man, historic, and it was rocking in there. The thing is we were kind of controlling the tempo the whole game, so we kept the crowd out of it the most of the time. But some of the times where Penn State would get it going a little bit, it was loud in there because it was small, compact, and echo. It was going.
Yeah, some of the greatest ever have played there. So one thing I wanted to ask, and then we do have one in the chat, but the one thing I do want to ask, when you talk about, with the NIL stuff and the transfer portal kind of changing the landscape in a lot of ways of college basketball, you talked about it earlier with Joe, your decision to come here. What would you say to future players that would consider transferring to Purdue and maybe might have a hesitation or two and speak on what the program has done for you as a person and an athlete?
Yeah. One thing I would say going in the portal and transferring in general is always make sure you ask the specific questions you want and get the specific answers because and like I said, this is just speaking in general terms. If you go and you ask certain questions, but you're not asking exactly what you want, then you're not going to get the exact answer you want. I think that's most important is because especially going into a school, you want to know what your role is going to be. You want to know how you can help the team win and how the coaches see you helping, the situation. So, and that's something I did going into Purdue. And I would say anybody transferring into Purdue, like, make sure you ask those questions to Coach Painter because he's a straight up dude and all he's about is winning. So he don't play favorites. He don't do, play who, his guys or anything like that. He's going to put on the court at that time who he thinks is going to help us win and help us win a Big Ten championship and, get to a Final Four. So I think he's pretty straight up with that. But like I said, whether that's Purdue or anywhere you go, I'd always ask specific questions, man, because then the one thing you don't want to do is, and I had a meeting with Coach Painter the other day, like I always ask him questions because I'm like, okay, well, when it's all said and done and I didn't ask those questions, well, I'm going to feel bad about it, man. I'm going to be like, dang, why didn't I ask that? So I make sure I always ask him certain questions of what I can do to help or what I can do, to do this and this and that. So anybody transferring in or transferring anywhere, make sure you get asked specific questions and get specific answers.
Appreciate that response. That's definitely, something that more and more players each year now have to consider. You got a lot of people pulling at you from a million different directions.
Oh, yeah.
Fans tweeting at you like crazy. I mean,
Yep.
We were all as Purdue fans just obsessive about every potential, transfer that was considering coming here. And then when they didn't, we're like, some fans take offense to that. And then you come here and look at how well it's worked out. So, I mean, everything seems to happen for a reason.
And to touch on that, like, obviously some people may not have came here. I don't know for sure. I'm just speaking. Some people may not have came because of NIL, as you mentioned, like, maybe some where they want more money or more this or more that. Like, man, I just wanted to come win at a high level. And I say if you're transferring here, the only thing you should want to do is come win at a high level and be able to listen and be taught by a decorated coach, seeing staff in general. That if you're worried about NIL, if you're worried about, all the other glitz and glams of the game, like, then Purdue's not for you. But if you're trying to, get down dirty, get some wins and be a part of a historic program and have a run for a national championship, then I'd say Purdue's your school.
Hell yeah, man. That's well said. One question from the chat. I always want the chat to feel like they're involved in this. Timothy Crimmins said, for David, Coach Payne seems to be feeding you more minutes at the 2 position. How much is that helping you find your shot in the flow of the game?
Yeah, I mean, 2 things to that. I mean, as I mentioned earlier, like, I've always been a 2 guard, so that's how I know naturally how to score. I feel like sometimes when I'm at the 1, I am more inclined to set things and pass because I'm trying to get everybody going. But, when you're at the 2, I mean, majority of the plays and things for you to score. That obviously Fletch, he gets off because he's the 2. But and I think one thing too is I think Painter and some of the coaches like when me and Braden are on the floor at the same time because it gives us a little more dynamic guard duo. You got 2 guys out there instead of 1 who can bring the ball up and are interchangeable and break presses, especially with teams who like to press. Having 2 guards out there who can do that is pretty essential. But it's helped me a lot, because like I said, I'm comfortable playing the 2. I wanted to play the 1 this year just because I feel like, wherever I go play at the next level, I have to at least display that I can do that. I can't be a 6 foot, 6'1", 2 guard, my whole career. And I mean, I could, but you're more valuable when you can do both. And I told Painter I wanted to do that. And he stuck to his word and he helped me do that. But again, I think he's done both for me, which has kind of helped me as a player and kind of get me back to being comfortable. So sometimes whether that's playing the 1 and being comfortable and trying to set things up for our offense, or playing the 2 when he thinks that I need a score or get a bucket for us.
Absolutely. Well, we really appreciate all your time. I mean, Brad Prather's asking in the chat about the 2,000 points. I mean, I'm sure you're aware you're getting close to it. We're all rooting for you. I don't want to put you on the spot about like, I'm gunning for this, because I know what you're going to say, like it's not important to you, or whatever. But, as fans, I know we are all rooting for you to drop a couple 20 burgers, sprinkle in some other ones. And before you know it, you'll eclipse that mark here.
Yeah. I for sure. I mean, to be honest, like, is that my main focus right now? No, I'm trying to. Listen, I'm gonna be honest. I'm trying to win a national championship, man. Like, I want to win a Big Ten first, but I think we can win a Natty. But that would mean everything to me as well, obviously, because there's not too many players who can reach 2,000 points in college. And that would mean everything to me. So I keep that in my mind sometimes, but I'm just like, whatever. Like, you get it, you get it. You don't. But I'd rather get a Natty over that any day. So.
Right. And I think, coming to Purdue is going to give you a good shot at that. We're certainly going to be rooting for you guys hard to have all your dreams come true in March. Some big goals ahead. One more favor, since you're want to be a media guy, and you're always welcome on here to talk basketball whenever you want, even post-career, you want to come on here to talk Big Ten or whatever. You are always welcome here. We will give you a platform if you need it, but I'm sure you'll have a bigger star to shine outside of our podcast, but you can come on and make fun.
Don't downplay it, baby. This is the Brags right here.
We're doing it up, and you can come on and give Bobby Riddell all the shit you want. But the one request we'll have for you tonight is, a promo. I'll give you an example. Sasha gave us one last year. It took him like 8 takes. Sure. Ethan Morton nailed it on 1 take. So this is basically how it goes.
This is Ethan Morton from Purdue men's basketball, and you're watching Boilers in the Stands.
So, Brags in the Stands is kind of the network, but what we've started to create here with the Purdue coverage, we call it Boilers in the Stands. So if you may, I'm going to isolate you on the camera, give us your best. I'm David Jenkins Jr., however you want to say it. And you're listening to Boilers in the Stands, and then we'll play it to start one of our next shows. So I'm going to isolate you on the camera here real quick, and I'll get your graphic up, and then you give us our best, and then we'll play it later. So I'll give you the countdown in 3, 2, 1.
Hey, everybody. This is David Jenkins Jr., and you're listening to Boilers in the Stands.
Bang. See, I like that. I like that. Sasha's my guy, Stefanovic, but it took him I think it was 3 takes. He's a smart kid.
Oh, man.
Yeah. Man. Well, nobody's perfect, David. That's what it is.
You're right. Not everybody
can certainly am not.
Not everybody can be Brags in the Stands, baby. My bad.
No, I'm definitely not. But hey, man, you're very gracious with your time tonight. I know everybody in the chat watching, and there'll be plenty more that tune in later and throughout the week as we promote it that are definitely going to enjoy this interview. We appreciate how open and honest you are about everything in this interview tonight. I think I can speak for Joe and Kraig when it comes to that. And again, thank you for your time. Best of luck here going forward. Maybe we'll bug you down the road, but we try to only bug guys once a year. But maybe we'll give you a text one of these days, way down the road. But we really appreciate you coming on after your big game on Sunday.
Yeah, man, I appreciate you guys for having me on here. I'm always open. Text me anytime, and I'll come through. Boiler up.
Yeah, and especially, you know, when you get done and next year you want to just talk basketball and hop on, man, we're always looking for former Boilers to come on and talk basketball and what's happening right now. So
100%.
Then you can really cut it
give you
loose
some
about-
practice as a co-host.
Yeah,
All right,
then
I'm down for
you
that.
can
I'm
really
down for
cut it loose about, you know, guys like Hunter Dickinson, but we won't go there now. All right, David. Have a good night. Take care. We'll see you tomorrow.
Hey, you guys have a good one. I'll see you guys.
Yes, sir. Boiler up.
Appreciate it.
That is David Jenkins Jr. bringing the heat here on Boilers in the Stands. That was a lot of fun. Appreciate everyone tuning in. If you enjoyed that interview, please go ahead and hit that like button. If you're watching in YouTube right now and you enjoyed what you just saw, just do us the favor by hitting that like button on the show. Subscribe to our channel, of course, too, because then you'll get updates when we're doing more shows. We're going to have a post-game show immediately following the game tomorrow night after Penn State. Well, you know, for home games, we got to get back to our house because we're at the stadium for most of the time. So we're going to be doing a post-game show as quickly as we can following the game against Penn State tomorrow. And then, of course, against Indiana on Saturday, we will be going live as soon as that buzzer rings. So we want everybody to be in here, hit that like button, subscribe, tell your friends. But when you hit that like button, it sends that through the algorithm of YouTube and brings more people to our channel to see what we're doing and interact in the chat with what you guys are doing. And we appreciate everybody in the chat with their comments and interaction. It really adds to the show. And I know David, seeing the kind words that we pull up on the screen, he really appreciates that. So, you know, you guys are bringing just as much importance to this as what we're doing here on the screen. So, you know, I think that was just an excellent interview from David Jenkins. He was
great.
He was great. I mean, you just can't ask. I mean, when he talked about thinking that he was going to be the starter and then, you know, had the humility of being like understanding, hey, Braden's that dude, you know, like that's not easy, especially for a veteran that has expectations that comes along here. So, you know, that goes a long way for the leadership he shows. Cause then the rest of the guys are like, well, if this guy's accepting his role and he's a veteran who's in his last year playing, then I got to fall into my role too. So that's a trickle down effect when it comes to that. But I do want to give a shout out to my guys over at FanBags real quick. And that David Jenkins interview was brought to you by FanBags Cornhole, Chicago's official supplier of professional cornhole boards and bags. Choose from any of their officially licensed designs or have my boy Brian design a custom set using anything from a selfie to your company's logo. Visit www.fanbagscornhole.com and use the promo code BRAGS to get 10% off your entire order. That's www.fanbagscornhole.com and use the promo code BRAGS for 10% off. Step up your game with FanBags Cornhole. So there's our guys. You know, I also want to give a shout out to the Collectors Cave. They're over my shoulder, but make sure you give a shout out or give a look to www.thecollectorscave.com for all your sports memorabilia needs, and keep on the lookout for their upcoming meet and greets and autograph, you know, chances at autograph of your favorite Chicago sports athletes. They're doing a lot of things over there at the Collectors Cave. So visit www.thecollectorscave.com. So Joe, that was a really, really fun interview. We got a big day coming up tomorrow. So obviously we're going to do a post-game show, but we can do a little preview here. We don't have to go too long or at length with it, considering we all have a long day of coverage coming tomorrow. But what are your thoughts going into the Penn State game? Obviously, Purdue took them down at the Palestra. We all know Micah Shrewsbury and his, familiarity with this program always adds a different wrinkle than the other Big Ten teams we play. What are your thoughts going into this matchup against Penn State?
Yeah, no, it should be another fun one. Purdue obviously won by, 15, 20? They won by 13. That's what it was. Sorry, I'm just pulling up something really, really quick. There we go. But no, it's going to be interesting. I think it's going to be kind of another chess match. Penn State very much hunts matchups. They want to get smaller guys on Pickett. They want to get, put Edie into space, just get the threes up. They have Funk, who he'll pull from 10 feet behind the line, and then he'll make it more often than he doesn't. One interesting thing, and I don't know if they'll go to it this game, but against Michigan in their last game, which they won by 22, and they were up by like 35 at one point late in the second half, they started Michael Henn at the center and Caleb Dorsey at the 4, that gives them 5 guys that are between 6'4" and 6'8". So before, when they played us last time, it was Najai at center. It's like 6'10", but he's a pretty raw freshman. And then a bunch of 4 like 6'5", 6'6" dudes. Dickinson had 6 points against that, the bigger lineup from Penn State. So, they might try to go to that to try to match Edie. Henn and Dorsey can still shoot. Henn knocked down 2 threes. So it's not like Edie can per se just, match up with a bigger guy who's, big as 6'8" for Penn State. Which is big, just not Zach Edey big. But I'll be looking at that. And then, can Morton once again at least slow down Jalen Pickett? I know Pickett went nuts in the end of the first half in the first game. But then aside from that, I think Purdue's going to run their offense. It's going to be another fun game. And, Purdue's going to get theirs. I don't know if Penn State has quite the answer, especially if the bigger lineup doesn't really work for them against Edey.
Well, the one thing that really happened in that game, and I wanted to ask you this, Kraig, was there was a run in the second half when Braden Smith was going pick and roll, bob and weave behind Zach Edey at the top of the key, and then he throws it up for the alley-oop. He did it about 4 times in a row. You think Penn State's going to have an answer for that? Or you think Braden Smith's just going to go right back to the well? Because we're getting to a point where, I think John Fanta said, you ask 10 coaches how to guard Zach Edey and you'll get 10 different answers. And that means there is no answer. And I thought that was a great quote. And, it's just going to be interesting to see what Micah Shrewsbury does to try to stifle this Purdue offense.
I guess the one thing that's interested me is Braden primarily comes around the right when he does that. And I've never seen anybody really try to just shut that down and force him to his left. And it'd be interesting to me if anybody does that, and if anybody can do that effectively. I don't know if you can with just the big body that Zach is up there to keep him from going around that right. But that might be interesting. I don't think so. I mean, Braden has shown for the most part that even if people throw something at him, he's going to figure it out by the second half. There's been a couple of games where they've been able to slow him down and not really get that, high ball screen pick and roll action started. But there's been some games where we just haven't needed it. It seems like Painter almost kind of saves that for when the system's not working, we're just going to turn Braden loose. I call it releasing the Kraken, and just kind of let him go to work and make his big impact there. I really thought in the first game, Pickett is going to get his. It doesn't matter. Pickett's going to get his every game. I thought the key in the first game was we did not let Lundy or Funk get going at all. It's kind of when people play Purdue, some people have taken the attitude of we're going to let Zach get his. And that almost worked in the first Michigan State game. We're going to let Zach get his and see if he gets tired shooting 20 shots or whatever. And I thought at Michigan State, he did start to wear down and get tired. He did not get tired at home. He looked refreshed. He got to sit a decent amount in that Michigan game because TKR was playing good. So he kind of got a break in that Michigan game to me coming into the home game against Michigan State. He looked fresh all the way, which would be awesome if TKR would keep playing at that level and Zach could get some more breaks going into big matchups like Wednesday night before we play IU on Saturday. But the job that we did, and then they'll try to, what I was saying with Michigan State is they were not going to try to let Fletcher or Braden or anybody else get going from the outside. They were going to let Zach get his, shut everybody else down. I think we kind of did that against Penn State. It was Pickett's going to get his. We're going to do our best to stop him, but we're going to not let all those other guys get going because that's when Penn State is lethal. When everybody else around that three-point arc starts just burying them, that's when they're super tough. And we've seen that this week when they blew out Michigan by 1 million. So I think that's going to be the key. Stay on Lundy, stay on Funk. Don't let them get going. Let's primarily play Pickett, man up and see what happens. And that might be Jenkins, to be honest, because Painter's put in those physical matchups where their guards are trying to back Braden down. We've seen him go long minutes with Jenkins in some of those matchups.
One observation from the chat, Jeremy Armstrong said, to maybe one example of him going left was on the Jenkins end of half buzzer beater, which obviously we have a video of here. So, but to Kraig's point, he is right. He does mostly go right, but there it is going left. You can kind of see just even the pass back there, how it's kind of off, not like when he's going right and when it normally comes out of one hand. There, it was kind of like he had to direct it a little more because that's just not his natural way of things, but he still found a way. Braden Smith is just incredible about knowing where everybody on the court is. The other big thing from the game on Sunday, and then we can, talk about how it affects going into this upcoming game against Penn State and just going into the future, is Zach Edey and this debate about, is he getting enough calls or should he be called more? Tom Izzo shows up in the post-game presser. Obviously, we put a tweet out there that got a lot of traction that he's Tom Izzo's quote was, "They don't call 3 seconds. They just don't." And, then he followed it up with a bunch of compliments to Zach Edey, but he started it with essentially saying that Edey's camped out down there. And then people were pointing out, including our guys over at ISC Purdue, had a great picture of Zach Edey getting hacked on this layup where it's just crazy because Zach just makes it look so easy, but you'll see right here, he gets smacked across the face and it's like it didn't even affect him, like to our eyes. He just simply puts it in the basket and goes to the other end, barely complains, maybe to the sideline a little bit there. Your take on all of this, because from Boilermakers fans' eyes, he should be to the free throw line every time. And then everybody else that's watching him across the country that for some reason can't appreciate the greatness that is Zach Edey thinks, he should be called for more fouls, or Tom Izzo thinks he should be called for more 3 seconds. I'll start with you, Kraig, and then I'll let you, get your perspective, Joe.
Well, you weren't on the show yet the other night. I'm sure you went back and listened. But we asked that question from those guys from Sleepers Media because I wanted somebody who was outside of the Purdue bubble that covers basketball on a national spectrum to answer that question. And Carter Elliott was like incredulous about all of that discussion just being a joke. And I think he kind of alluded to it there that like if you're going to complain about Zach fouling other people, go back and look at all the fouls that should be called for him in his favor over time also. And we've seen quite a few other people. Painter in his weekly show just the other day said they went back and watched and they were like, yeah, like Zach could have been called on 3 plays, 3 extra times that he probably should have been called for a foul, but they counted 9 that should have been called where other guys fouled him. So like, if they want to play that narrative, let's go. Let's friggin' go, because Zach might end up with 4 fouls at the end of the day, but he's going to go to the free throw line another 6, 7, 8 times in the game also.
Right. And to your point, before I get your perspective on this, Joe, because these are the numbers, and so I'll kind of set you up on a tee here, because this is something Joe's pointed out a lot as far as people attacking Zach Edey. But this person tweeted, and Kraig quote tweeted it, but he said, Michigan State centers took a combined 4 shots in 37 minutes. That's part of the reason why there isn't any fouls. And then Kraig says, moreover, pretty certain Michigan State's guards took like 3 shots at the rim when Zach was in. 2 of those were called fouls. People just don't challenge him often.
And I was quoting Joe from the show.
Right.
Joe actually said that first. I totally stole Joe's quote from the show when I did that.
Hey, whatever works. I'm pulling up the exact numbers right now so we can be as accurate as possible. There we go. So yeah, they took 15 shots at the rim, it says, per synergy. 3 or 4 of those are in transition, 2 or 3 are lobs, and then a couple putbacks and stuff. Teams just don't. They just don't go at Edey. Purdue allows 32% of the shots at the rim, which is the second best rate in the entire country. It's one of the best rates, or not best because it's not per se better or worse. But it's one of the lowest rates of the past 7 years. You have to go back to Taco Fall at UCF, another 7 foot whatever guy who was not a national player of the year, as some people might not believe at his height. But yeah, no, I think it's just all there's definitely stuff Edie gets away with. He does for sure. The 3 seconds is I've been unwilling really to bring it up because I just didn't want to be the one to bring it up first, but it's brought up in it a little bit. He camps at times. He really does. I think that MSU game, he actually was pretty good. There's maybe twice. It's just when he's so big that when he really camps, it's wow, he's there. But yeah, teams don't go at him. He had 2 fouls. I'm going to be honest, I don't remember the first one. The second one, Hoger drove right at him, initiated contact, and went up. That's a foul. Edie put his hand up. It's yeah, that was a foul on me. If players attack him, then yeah, that can happen more. Edie's also very, very good at staying vertical. He doesn't need to go into people and initiate contact. He'd honestly prefer no contact on guards that are driving. It looks like he's rather just going to time you up and just block your shot off the backboard. But it's so. It's unfortunate because it's really taken away from just how dominant of a season that Edie's having. And there's the Big Ten player of the race, which Trace has been putting up wild numbers. That's for sure. I was kind of just digging through some numbers just for fun because that's fun to me. Digging through some of the numbers today, and in conference play alone, only Big Ten play, Zach Edey is 24th in free throw rates. And so free throw rate is how many free throws you take compared to, field goals. So a high free throw rate means you take a ton of free throws and you take a few amount of shots that are not free, don't result in free throws. He's 24th on the list. There was Trace Jackson Davis was ahead of him, Hunter Dickinson, Cliff Amori, a bunch of guards. I forget the exact list, but it's not he's, for the amount of shots that he's taking, it's not he's getting, an insane number of free throws compared to the number of shots he's taken. So that's my ramble. I wish we could just appreciate greatness. Even on the other end, I'm going to be honest, I hate.
And for people that don't understand the rule, for instance, you could go 1 Mississippi, 2 Mississippi, 3. So, but once he gets the ball, he's allowed to be in the paint. So I don't know for everybody watching is how in tune they are to the rules. And then the other aspect of it, and somebody brings it up in the chat, Alex Clausen says the 3 seconds comment from Izzo is a joke. With Edie's size, a foot is always outside the paint. And if you pay attention to this with Zach, he does make an effort when he doesn't get the ball, when he does post up and he doesn't get it, to get back out, put a foot out. But Joe, you tell me the rule. Does he only have to get 1 foot out of the paint, or does he have to get both feet out of the paint to consider that he's, to reset the 3 seconds, so to speak?
I'm going to be honest. I don't entirely know, but I'm really trying to look it up. In offense, who has?
I am efforting Isaiah Walker right now, who officiates.
See, this would have been a great
according to this
Isaiah.
Yeah, do you send me a link real quick? I'll see if he's available.
Yeah, I'm happy to, but
you guys keep talking other stuff, but I'll effort Isaiah to see if he's available.
Quick Google search, which is kind of what I thought was player must have both feet outside the paint. I will say, I know it was Edie camps at times. I think my point more was when he camps, it's kind of egregious at times. And that's a very small percent. That's 5%, 10% maybe max. Besides that, if you watch his footwork in that, he's very, very aware of where those lines are. And he's very much, he does more of he gets 1 foot out and kind of picks up his other foot. And that's good enough. How many times have you guys seen 3 seconds called against, on Edie this year, but also from other teams? 5 times, maybe. It's not like it's
right. It's not just not called with him. It's not called across the board. And for Zach, like you said, it just is more apparent because of how big he is.
Yeah. It seems like as long as you make an effort, just to, you get 1 foot out, you kind of get your other foot out, it's going to reset. I don't think refs are too worried about that. It seems like.
I will say this because obviously people, we hit our high mark when David was in, and people are trickling out. You got the IU game approaching the half. Maryland's up 27-26. Last I checked, Iowa was leading Northwestern early, and both games are certainly, obviously every Big Ten game is of interest for Purdue, but obviously we want to see if IU falls for the trap game, and Northwestern being the only team with 3 losses. The rest of the Big Ten has 4 losses or more. and Kraig is getting mad at me again, but this is something I'm obsessively focused on because you gave me another look.
I'm not getting mad. That's the look I give when I'm thinking. I'm like, no, honestly, what I was thinking was, is that a trap game? I would almost bet that Maryland was favored in that game.
They were favored by 2.5.
It's a trap game in the sense that
they were favored by 2.5. That's not a trap game. Maryland's supposed to win.
It's a mentality trap game because, like we just talked about with David, like even he was asking the assistant coaches about Saturday. Everybody, the IU players, we're only human, and they are too as players on this team. Everybody is thinking about Saturday. Everybody.
Yeah. How worried are we about tomorrow being a trap game for us? Like,
it's a trap game. It's a trap game for IU right now. They're down. It's a trap game for Purdue against Penn State tomorrow. I don't care what Vegas says. But go ahead, Joe. What were you saying?
Oh no, that's all I had. I was just like, are we concerned? Like my guess, honestly,
Yes.
let's say my prediction, whatever, because I'm always wrong. I would say it's probably Purdue is tied at half roughly, and then they win by 10. I think the first half might be kind of slow, to be honest.
I mean,
but also
like what game Zach Edey's going to get in foul trouble in. You just never know who you're going to come across that gets red hot. I mean, Penn State beat Michigan. They beat the brakes off Michigan, and they had like 70% 3-point shooting in that game. They're no pushover. They could get hot. If they're shooting 70% from 3 against us, we're going to be in a ball game, ladies and gentlemen. I get Maryland was favored. So, whatever. I don't care about the line. IU's gotten hot lately. They've won 5 or 6 in a row. They're playing really well. This is kind of their prove it moment here that they're back, and like what they're doing is legitimate because some of the competition, obviously the Big Ten's not as good as it has been in years past. So, they're winning who's on their schedule, but they got to prove it. And winning at Maryland certainly would be an impressive win, especially when you consider everybody's thinking about Saturday. So it'll be interesting to see how this all unfolds. We did have a question in the chat from our guy, Icy Mike. He said, I have a message for Kraig. It was very ominous. Oh. And then he wanted to ask you.
Yeah, dude, I read that and I was like, oh my gosh.
I have a message for Kraig.
If you got to preface it, like you're not going to just type the message. You're going to preface it with, I have a message for you.
I thought
something bad was coming.
Well, or it was going to be like a message from Bitcoin is Freedom, who's a constant commenter in our YouTube shows after the shows in the comments. Giving us a lot of love, obviously, is enjoying what we're doing.
Yeah, but I enjoyed his question, actually.
Well, we'll get to his question here in a minute, Mike, because we did bring
the suspense. The suspense is going to kill people.
That's how we keep them in here. That's a cliffhanger. See, we're pros here in this media business because now we're bringing on a surprise guest, Kraig's friend, and a guy that knows a thing or two about calling the game as a referee in basketball. Isaiah, welcome to the show. You're muted.
Hi there. Yep, I still haven't.
No, you're good.
Through all this.
Yeah, absolutely. So, state your name for the witnesses here, so everybody kind of knows who you are and what you do and the background you have. Because I think Kraig and I have talked about the idea of bringing you on sometimes for some of the post-game stuff, if there's like a pivotal call and we need the expertise. Why don't you explain to the viewers exactly who you are and your background?
Yeah. So I'm Isaiah. I'm sure some Purdue people have seen me on Twitter. I did do some refereeing, started when I was a student at Purdue and was NFHS certified. Moved to Illinois. I'm on a little bit of I call it like a sabbatical, right? A little bit of a break from it, going to be getting back into it probably at the end of the year, but little bit of experience there, right? I'm not a college ref. I don't want anybody to ever think that I am a college ref. But I find the rules really interesting, right? And I think that basketball is one of those sports where there's a lot of confusion about it, right? Because you see so many myths and people just, I see people yelling over the back, right? And if you just kind of understand, how things are called a little bit more, it makes more sense. It's kind of something that I try to do with my Twitter a little bit.
Yeah, no.
Yeah, and your Twitter breakdowns of a lot of those calls are absolutely fantastic, just in terms of how you describe the letter of the law, the rule. like the player losing his shoe the other day, and you're like, well, by the letter of the law, they actually can do that if they consider it, a potential injury for other players on the court or that sort of thing. But we were talking about 3 seconds calls, and Braggs, I'll let you kind of go with where you were headed with that, and maybe he can give us a little bit more.
I mean, we put a tweet out there, and Tom Izzo, when he was giving his ass kind of set up to compliment Zach Edey, who put 70 points on him in 2 games this year, and they asked him, like, talk about the challenges and what it's like to coach against Zach Edey, and he was like, well, he's the biggest guy I've ever coached against, and then he followed that up with, and they just don't call 3 seconds. They just don't. And then he went on to say how great Zach is and how tough he is and all this competitor, blah, blah, blah. But I just found it interesting that those were the first 2 things he said. And then when I put it on Twitter, it was like, a volcano explosion from every school in the Big Ten who doesn't like Tom Izzo. Then you started to have pushback from people that do believe that Zach Edey's camped out way too much in the paint. I even had this guy send like 8 videos to that comment thread. Like, he was passionate about this. And he was like, here's one with 8 seconds in the lane, 7 seconds, 6, it's like, okay, so I want to get your perspective on this. And then also maybe explain, we talked a little bit about it, maybe, but from your background, explain the exact rule and your perspective on how Zach is playing, inside of those rules.
Yeah. So I will say the one thing about 3 seconds is anybody, people say it's inconsistently ruled. Sometimes it's missed. I don't think most people would disagree with that enforcement on 3 seconds can be a little bit spotty sometimes, right? The whole idea of the 3 second call is, again, it's to stop, a certain player, anybody from sitting in the lane and just camping there and making all the defenders have to, stay in that lane. There's an emphasis kind of on trying to clean up post play a little bit, right? If we're making players continually rotate in and out of the lane, there's less likely that we're going to have rough post play. So that's kind of the idea behind the rule. Now, the rule itself, obviously we know the lane, right? Our free throw lane going out, that's our restricted area for a 3 second call. When you're enforcing 3 seconds, it's any part of the body in that 3 second lane for more than 3 seconds, as long as that offensive team has control of the ball. In NCAA, that count is suspended if the player in the lane receives the ball and then has to make some kind of attempt to score. So it's not enough to just have the ball. It's not enough to dribble the ball. You have to be making a genuine attempt to score the basketball or to pass out.
You can't go into your Harlem Globetrotter routine once you get the ball in the paint, start dribbling and doing all this crazy stuff.
Right. And then also in NCAA, there's an allowance, right, for an attempt to leave the lane as well, right? So in NBA, you have to be completely out, whereas in NCAA, there's kind of an allowance, right, for a player who's attempting to leave the lane. And a lot of times, I try to explain this time because people will say like, oh my gosh, the referees, why are they talking to players? Why are they talking to the coaches, right? It's something we call preventative officiating. We give tips to coaches, to players in the middle. Hey, number 15, you're in the lane, right? Try to move, right? Just in the middle of the play so that they're aware of it. Because nobody really wants to see a referee sitting there with a stopwatch, timing 3 seconds. And as soon as it hits 3 seconds, I'm hitting you with a 3 second call, right? So that's the first thing I don't think people see, when they're going, oh my gosh, he's sitting in the lane, he's not moving. We don't know, have they said something, how much have they been watching? So, does Zach sit in the lane? I think he probably does sometimes. And I think that, if you want to say he's getting away with 3 seconds, he probably is. But at the same time, I just think that's probably the wrong thing to be focusing on with Zach Edey.
It's definitely fair, and I appreciate your honesty and Joe's to saying this and being able to admit it without like feeling like, oh, I'm a fan, and we want to be unbiased. Obviously we're fans, so we're going to be meatballs at times, but I appreciate your honesty with this because I'm not going to completely disagree with it. At the same time, how consistently is it called across the country? Why are we just pinning this on Zach's responsibility to get out of there? So you're saying if you make an attempt to get out, do you got to get both feet completely out? Or, sometimes you see that where they make the attempt to get out and one foot out, then they come back in.
Right. So once you're out, if you go back in, it's a new 3 seconds, right? So
right, but both feet have to be completely out.
So the rule says that it's any part of the body that remains in the 3 seconds lane for more than 3 consecutive seconds. So if you just pull a foot out and you still have a foot in, that's still, you're not out yet. Now, if you're making that attempt to get out, again, you have a temporary suspension of the count. And then if you get out, the count is over, go back in, it's a new count.
I have a question about this preventative officiating. So every single play when Tom Izzo talks to officials and they answer him back, is that preventative officiating?
No, you know what? I don't think you will see many referees who are not fans or who are fans of what Tom Izzo does. And you know what? You got to give the man some credit. He's really good at it. He's really good at doing it. But no, it really depends on the referee. It depends on the coach. It depends on how the game's going, right? Like, for me, when I go into a game, I always would tell the players, I tell the coaches, whoever, I'm here, right? You have a question, ask me. I'm going to answer it. I might have to wait to a dead ball, right? But I'm going to answer your question. Just don't be yelling at me. Don't be screaming I'm wrong, right? Things like that. Just ask. So, if a coach comes up and asks me, hey, you had a foul down there. Can you just explain to me what you saw? Happy to do that, right? I'm going to give you that explanation. I don't know if who saw the IU Ohio State game, right? They had DJ Carstensen mic'd up. I thought it was a great look. I would love to see the Big Ten do this more. Because you were able to hear some of those conversations that DJ was having with Mike Woodson, with Chris Holtman, some of those things that he was saying where, when the coach is mad about a call, right? Oh, I thought he traveled, and the coach and the referee can go and say, oh, no, he never lifted his pivot foot, so it's not a travel. It's little things like that, again, that you miss on the broadcast that we don't always see.
Well, and he admitted a couple of times, I didn't have the best look and I had to make a call on it.
And that's important, right?
Yeah.
Because
so, Joe, you got anything for Isaiah?
I'm just kind of sitting back listening right now. I'm enjoying it.
What?
I think you guys
as an official watching Zach play, and the whole he's getting away with fouls compared to a lot of Purdue fans saying he's getting fouled way more. Just in general, watching the game, I'd like to hear your comments on that.
It's difficult, right? Because he's such a unique player in college basketball, right? It's just not something you see a lot, right? It takes an adjustment for any official, because the contact he makes, it just looks so different. Zach going into a guy is going to look like, he's getting run over by a truck versus another guy who might go in exactly the same way with the exact same positioning, and it doesn't look nearly as bad. So, as an official, you have to stick to the, your rules. You have to stick to your interpretations. You've got to be really disciplined to be able to say, being a big guy is not a foul, and it may look different and it may be really difficult, but you have to be able to have that control and say that. So, with Zach, the best I would tell players, whatever, is, and referees too, if you're looking at him, you just need to be consistent, right? We just need to be able to say what we're doing here, refereeing our defense, refereeing, our consequence to the play, right? There's going to be contact. It's one of those big myths about basketball is that it's a non-contact sport. It's not true. There's always going to be contact. Right. And we just have to be really, really aware of, is this defender, just because he went flying, just because Zach went into him and he goes flying, was he in legal guarding position? Because it doesn't matter how far he went flying if he's not legal. It's right. A defense.
And a lot of people are calling Zach Edey Shaq Edey, and the NBA had to figure out how to officiate Shaq. also.
Right.
Like
So-
they talked about that a lot when Shaq was early on of like, how do you officiate that? Joe, I know you had a question for Isaiah too.
Yeah. I'm going to try to explain this. It would have been easier with a video, but was not prepared for it. A lot of times, Edie, and I'm actually asking this because I got asked about it in my thread film. Somebody DM me asking about it. Edie, he gets to his post up and he turns, and sometimes like that elbow it's not like he's throwing it, but he's moving and it makes contact. I know it's not, it's harder to just talk about it like this over without seeing like an actual video, but what's kind of your take on that? I know a lot of non-Purdue fans want that to be fouls. Purdue fans are probably going to be like, that's just moving.
So elbows.
Yeah, that's just his size and he's turning, right?
Yeah, and elbows are tricky, right? Because in the NCAA they keep changing these rules interpretations on elbows. And I think what I'm looking for with there is an elbow is, first of all, we're thinking about what's a basketball play, what is a normal basketball play, because that's a big criteria of flagrant foul, offensive foul. So if he's making a natural movement with the basketball, and he's not jamming his elbow out, he's not making any attempt to use that elbow to clear space, then there's a lot more latitude for the player, right? Just because his elbow is, he's taller, so his elbows are closer to somebody's face, that doesn't necessarily mean that it is automatically a foul. Now, if he starts using that elbow to clear space, you see your chicken wings, things like that, that's where the contact starts to become an offensive foul. And again, this is where it's tricky for referees, because this big guy, you really got to be disciplined and be able to tell what he's doing, what's natural for him. And it's things like film study too. Like these referees watch film, and I guarantee you before they watch a Purdue game, they watch a lot of ED film because they got to know what's natural for him.
Well, people in the chat certainly am appreciating your insight here. This guy didn't log his name in, but that's okay. He said this guy undersold himself. Sounds like he knows what he's talking about. He certainly does. I mean, do you want to tell people where they can find you on Twitter? If people are on that hellscape of an app and maybe learn a thing or two when you're giving perspective during the game?
So my handle's just at Walker I141. I alternate between referee talk and plays and just sometimes just absolutely making fun of stupid things that happen because they're Big Ten games and they're full of stupid things. But
well, if there's one thing I specialize in, it's stupid things. So
well, and Greg, he posts pictures of fantastic food all the time that he cooks. I told him, I was like, food. I don't know how big of an audience there would be, but if you want to have a cooking show where you also talk Big Ten basketball, I would sign in.
The perks of major signs, right?
So we'll put you to the test, Isaiah. Is this a block or a charge, as Rex Chapman would say? You'll have the look there, and then you'll have a replay that it'll show up top, a better angle.
So I'll look at the replay here because I have a gut instinct here, but I'll wait to see the replay.
We'll start with your gut, and then here comes the replay.
Yeah, so my gut here is that's an offensive foul. And the reason why I think that that's an offensive foul is, again, when we're refereeing, the number one thing we always say is you referee the defender. When you're looking at the defender, that is how you're going to get plays, right? So our question with this defender is he in legal guarding position? Does he have both of his feet at when he establishes both of his feet on the floor? Has he earned his position, right? I don't want to always use beat the guy to the spot because that's not always true, but is he in position to take that foul? Does he take the contact straight to his torso? And to me, when I look at that, the answer is yes. He has established himself. He is in that position, in that legal guarding position. Important thing to know is he can move backwards. People often forget that is when you've established you can move backwards. And Edie kind of goes right into him when he has that legal guarding position. Edie initiates that contact. So it looks like they call an offensive foul there. And I from that angle, again, basketball officiating all about angles too. From that angle, I would support that offensive foul call.
So even if he starts leaning back a little bit, if that contact's made and it makes him fall over, it can still be an offensive foul.
He can lean back. That's fine. He can move backwards. The other thing he's allowed to do is he's allowed to brace himself for contact. So, if he's, again, big guy's about to take him, he can lean. Now, one thing you could look at.
Because I think a lot of fans would say, "Oh, he was already leaning back, so that's a flop." You know what I'm saying? That's where I'm going with that.
That is one thing you can look at here is the defender embellishing contact. I can't really tell from this far up and from a scoreboard. Things about flopping, it's something that you know in the moment. Like you've done enough refereeing, it's really usually pretty easy to tell when these guys are embellishing in real time. When you watch a replay, everything can look like a flop. So it's one of those reasons why like people always say, "Oh, I want every foul call reviewed," and most people who referee be like, "You don't want that," because
certainly in Purdue games, because we'll be there all night.
Yeah, and I see a comment here about how many would lean back a little bit. That's exactly it, and it's in the rule that the player is allowed to brace themselves for contact, because you don't want a guy just having to like, oh my gosh, this 7-footer is coming right at me, and I just got to sit here and take it. Like, I mean, that's gonna hurt, right? So again, you're looking for that legal guarding position. He, in my opinion, has it there. Edie initiates all that contact. I can't comment on whether it's embellished or not, but from what I can see, I'd support the offensive foul call there. And that's also the right official making that call. You always want the proper official. When they start reaching out of their zones, that's where you start seeing weird stuff happening.
Yeah, that's one thing I see you comment a lot too on is like that official should never make that call. Like it needs to be whatever, this other official in the other zone.
Yeah, so we call it, it's called your primary coverage area. In college basketball, we are always using 3-man crew. Sometimes in high school, you use 2 men. So in basketball, right, you have these areas of coverage. You have your lead official who is on the baseline. You have a trail official who's on the same side of the court as the lead, and he's further back behind the 3-point line. And then you have your center official on the opposite side of the court from the free throw line extended. And you want these guys, they have specific areas of the court that they're covering, and that is designed so that you have the best look on it. One of the big things that is really hard for newer officials is when you're on the baseline and you have a play on the opposite side of the court. They have a tendency to want to call across the lane because they see some contact over there and they want to call that foul across the lane. And you are going to be almost like 99% of the time, like when people see like clean blocks called fouls, I can almost guarantee you it's somebody calling across the lane because it looks like a foul. It really does. And it's a big thing about trusting your partner and knowing, hey, you know what? That's not my coverage area. That guy's got it. He's a good referee and he's got that. And again, it goes back to this. We all make mistakes. I mean, I've had plenty of times myself where I saw it and I shouldn't have done it and I reacted to it and I called it, and right away I was like, nope, I know that's wrong. And a great way I think that officials connect sometimes is people think like, oh, the official's got to be perfect every time, right? You go over to a huddle and you say, hey, you know what? I think I might have gotten that one wrong. I'm going to do better on that one. They won't complain to you for the rest of the game. Now, as long as you're not saying that every play, but.
Right. Isaiah, I only have one other question for you. Does Joe Jackson look more like Caleb First or Willie Berg?
Oh, man. That's tough. I feel like I'm getting a little bit of Willie Berg in him, but that's just me. I hope that wasn't the wrong answer.
I don't think there was no wrong answer.
Well, this is the easy one, so I won't make you break it down because this was a foul, and if you disagree, then we're gonna tee you up because this is where Zach Edey gets hacked across the face. Yeah.
So somebody mentioned this play. And I was at the game, so I didn't watch the entire. Replay and everything, but somebody's like, oh, did you see Edey getting hacked on the face? I was like, well, I was at the game, so I don't entirely know what play, but then as soon as I saw this replay, yes, that's a foul 20 times out of 10.
Insane. And like, you talk about on the defensive end for when players are guarding Edey, like some things, he comes with so much force, it just looks so much different. It's also on the offensive end when he has the ball and he's getting fouled. Something that would be an egregious foul for somebody else, it doesn't look the same because Zach is able to take that contact a little easier. I'm sure it takes a toll on him, but he doesn't make it look like that because right here it's smacked across the face and it's like a fly. It's like he was hit with a fly swatter.
He's like
7 feet tall and he made it look like nothing.
And he puts it back up so easily, right? So it looks like nothing's happening there, and you never know what the official saw there. That's John Higgins on the baseline there. I mean, he's one of the best in the business. We all miss calls. You never know. Maybe he got caught ball watching, right? You never know what happened there. But again, yeah, Edie doesn't make it easy because it looks like nothing happened here. And in that split second that defender gets him on the face there, I mean, you might not even tell.
And Zach's not a flopper or a complainer, like where other guys might make it look like they've been fouled more. He doesn't do that, nor does he go at the refs all that often. He's pretty soft-spoken, but you can tell when he gets pissed off when he's had enough too.
He was mad in that game.
I'm really enjoying your perspective here. But quickly, because we've been going a little bit here, and there's still plenty of people tuned in, so I know everybody's enjoying watching this. But I know Joe and Craig got to get to bed. I'm in the Central Time Zone. You guys are on the East Coast. But since I got you here, Isaiah, the one observation I make every time down is when Zach Edey is posting up, his defender is pushing him away from the basket as much as he can. Michigan State got called for it the ref pointed at his knee, slapped his knee to explain he was using his knee to knee him out. You'll see that. And then you'll see just straight up 2 hands to the back and pushing him out, whether it's for a post up or even on rebounds at times. But I'm specifically talking about even before the ball comes in, this battle between Edey and his defender. And how much allowance is there when it comes to that? Because I'm watching this every time going, he's fouling him, and they don't call it. Most of you want to talk about 3 seconds not being called out that much. When a defender is pushing Zach, it's like maybe 5% they call it, because they could call it literally every time down the court. If you're going by the book, what do you make of that take from me?
It happens a lot because if you talk about the strict rule book, right, the 2 things that are supposed to automatically trigger a foul, 2 hands on the defender or 2 hands on the offensive player is a foul, and having an arm bar extended into your offensive player you're defending, that is supposed to be an automatic foul as well. So, it happens all the time. And you see these screenshots, right? People post these things of jersey being grabbed, all of these kind of things that aren't being called. Yeah. So right there, you had 2 hands on they could technically call that. Now, the other thing you want to keep in mind here is if the official thought he had a clear path to basket, you don't want to call that little touch foul and then deny him that basket, right? But it absolutely gets missed. And that's what I usually try to tell people to close out that foul thing, right? Could Zach Edey get called for some more fouls on the offensive end? Could he get called for some more 3-second calls? Yeah, he absolutely could. But if you want to start talking about fouls and you want to start hunting fouls, we have to be consistent. We can't call one game on one end of the court and not on the other. So if you want touch fouls on the offensive end going against Zach Edey, you're going to get 40 free throws on the other end. And so, what kind of game do you want to watch? For me, I'm a little bit more willing to have Edey take a little bit more on the defensive end, but then not get called for stupid, phantom charges, right? Because nobody wants to see him sit the bench, but I don't think most people want to see him shoot 60 free throws either, right? Because he's so good at what he does,
It'll just be interesting.
I'll take 60 free throws if it gets us to the Final Four.
Dwayne Wade, when they won their first NBA Finals without LeBron and that whole crew with just Shaq, Dwayne Wade was going to the free throw line 35 times a game in that series against the Mavericks. People forget it's been a long time, but he got to the line. Zach should get to the line as much as he deserves. But the thing that I'm more concerned about is when we get to March and you're one and done. That's it. You only have one chance, and you have different referee crews that haven't reffed him all season. May have a different perspective on how he should be officiated from watching on TV or watching the tape. And then you get in the moment of this one game that means everything to the programs playing. And then sometimes Zach, it's tough. You're going to have to go through a gauntlet to get to the dreams of being in the Final Four in a national championship. And they're going to come across a game where a ref just doesn't see it the way we see it as fans. Because I'll tell you right now, I know I brought St. Peter's once, and I know we all hate hearing that name, but in the St. Peter's game, yeah, Purdue didn't come ready to play. They looked starstruck. by the scene, just everybody rooting against them and everybody rooting for the Cinderella story in St. Peter's. But I was there, and Travion Williams and Zach Edey were fouled every single time down the court, every single time before they even got the ball. And it maddens me. I don't care when, in the regular season, the ebb and flow game to game, it doesn't bug me as much. But when you get to the end of the season and everything's on the line, win or go home, I want these refs to be on their game. And I just take real exception to the things they allow players to do to bigs like Zach Edey and Travion Williams. So that is my rant. Isaiah, really appreciate you coming on here tonight on such short notice. Your insight was certainly really
literally 60-second notice.
60 seconds.
Hey, Isaiah, can you please come on? 60-second notice.
You know what, Isaiah? I think we're just now gonna make you our ref correspondent. It's a lot like on the Fox broadcast when they bring on Mike Pereira, so we can argue with him about whether or not it was a catch or not a catch in the Super Bowl. You're gonna be our Mike Pereira, Isaiah. So you're literally on call at all times. I don't care what you're doing.
I'll keep that Twitter buzzer right there.
If you're eating dinner with your family, I don't care what it is. When we send you the link, you're needed. You got to come in, and then we get this kind of expertise. Sound good, Isaiah?
Sounds good. Hey, thanks for having me on.
Appreciate you coming on. Have a good night.
Thanks. You too.
Boiler up. So that is Isaiah, our new referee correspondent. Craig's just killing the game here lately on Brags and Stands, bringing on interesting guests. Every week now, Craig's thinking outside the box what we need to add to this Boilers in the Stands presentation that we do here. So, we're coming up on the 2-hour mark. I told Joe after the David Jenkins interview that we'd be quick, but that was certainly an interesting little mini interview there. And I think we all enjoyed it, and everybody that's still tuned in certainly did as well.
Yeah, sorry.
No, it's cool. Hey, no, I thought
good.
That was awesome.
I enjoyed listening.
That was great and a great way to set the table for him. So when we can bring him on for those shorter bits, for some of the post-game shows, now we know who he is. He's proved himself to the audience that tunes in here to Boilers in the Stands. Somebody, we had a couple questions in the chat. I don't even know if I want to get to them, but I know Icy Mike was asking me something.
He wants to go back to that Detroit Pistons comparison.
Well, yeah. Okay. So he wants to ask you, he had a question for you and a question for me, and we appreciate our guy, Icy Mike, even though he's busting my ass on Twitter about Justin Fields. And if he keeps that up, we're going to have a real problem. But Icy Mike says, how much does this team, Kraig, remind you of our 2004 Pistons team? And I don't know who R is. I don't know if he's got a mouse in his pocket or what, but how much does this team remind you of the 2004 Pistons that took down the Lakers?
Well, I think from the standpoint of that team in 2004 was very much like, well, they don't have any like upper echelon superstars on that team, but they played incredible team ball. And that, who was the coach of that team? Larry Brown. Larry Brown. Yeah. And Larry Brown very much preached defense and share the ball and be selfless. So from that standpoint, I think in many ways it does. Purdue, if you would look on an individual talent standpoint, now Zach Edey is going to be a National Player of the Year. He is the best player in college basketball. If you're going to ask about NBA talent, like Purdue doesn't really have a true blue definite first rounder on this team. Some would argue we don't even have a second rounder on this team this year. So from that standpoint of like, yeah, we don't have maybe upper echelon guys in our specific league, college basketball, kind of like the Pistons didn't in the NBA either. But they just fit perfectly as a team. I think that's a really great comparison. Also, one of my favorite NBA players during that time span ever is Rasheed Wallace. I loved Rasheed Wallace. Yeah. Like that dude had a turnaround 15-foot jumper like no other. He was tough. He was a rebounder, and he just banged shots in big, big moments. I love that dude. So Rasheed is not like Rashid and Zach are not the same big man at all, obviously. But from your comparison of like, if you're going to go individual talent in terms of NBA future and that type of stuff, not having that necessarily on this Purdue team, similar to what Pistons didn't have like all NBA talent on their team and just was a team sharing the ball, playing good defense. I see the comparison a lot. Okay. I like it.
I see Mike's question to me was, do I feel that Coach Painter ran up the score a bit on Tom Izzo to kind of prove a point? And that's interesting. I mean,
no way.
I saw a couple people bring this up on Twitter saying
they're great friends, dude. They're great friends.
They are great friends. I agree. And Tom Izzo had a great picture last year in media day before the season with Sasha, Travion, and Eric Hunter and Matt Painter, where Tom's like gets in front of them and makes like a funny, I'm in front of you. And then they took a picture. Like, they're friends at the end of the day. And I think they both have great respect for how they run their programs. So no, I do not. And Matt also addressed, because they asked if they were trying to get Zach Edey his 40. And when they pulled him and then they brought Zach back in, people thought Zach was done for the day. Then Zach comes back in, gets a couple more points, damn near gets the 40 burger, but he falls short at the free throw line and he missed an and one that would have got him it. And Painter said, no, it was about matchups, because Michigan State made some substitutions and went small. So Painter went small. And then when they went back to their bigger lineup, that's when he brought Zach in. So it wasn't about trying to run him up to 40. And then TKR was begging Matt Painter at the end to not sub him in.
Not want to come in.
Yeah, he did.
Yeah, that was the coach's answer. I still have a hard time believing that he didn't put he's never gonna say that he put Zach in to get 40. Like, he's not gonna give that answer.
And Painter's not stupid. He knows he's got a National Player of the Year front runner on his team. That's huge for Zach, the person, and I know that's first and foremost for Matt, and it's huge for the program as well. And getting a 40 burger on your resume doesn't cement it, but it's a big notch on that belt. Go ahead, Joe.
And in transfer portal era, it matters. Like you seeing your coach go to bat for like your individual accomplishments also sometimes. Like, I think that matters in the transfer portal era. But go ahead, Joe. Sorry, I didn't mean to.
No, I was just gonna say, when I watched it back, did my thread. When Edey took those free throws and then he got taken out, they actually showed, like, they had it on Painter, and you see Brantley come up and you see him say to Painter, hey, they're going small. And then Painter was like, oh, okay. And then he got TKR. I did catch that on the watch back. I was like, oh, that was interesting.
We were up like 17 with 1:30 left.
And
it was like 3 minutes. It was 2:26 when he came out.
Yeah.
And then like 1:45 he came. No, it might have been more. They had to be more than that.
I did hear a coach on a podcast say that's just how we're wired. He said maybe I'm wrong. I did hear a coach say that's how we're wired, where if we see a matchup change, we're automatically going to flip that switch and not think about time and place sometimes. So yeah, maybe so.
Prakash in the chat says thoughts on Joe Barry Carroll. Interviewed him for my honors class. Super cool dude. So tall. Laughed my ass off. So maybe we'll bring Joe Barry Carroll on the show one day. That
would be great.
A guy at CHGO that's on our sales team was like, about Joe Barry Carroll. I'm like, well, yeah, I know Joe Barry Carroll, but obviously not as well as the people that watched him play. But we'll see if we can bring him on, and we'll let Kraig, lead the conversation. I don't know. Did you watch Joe Barry?
I was 3 years old, Braggs. I was 3 years old.
I'm kidding. But we appreciate everybody coming on tonight.
Oh, I see what you're doing there, Greg.
We're 2 minutes away from the 2 hour mark. So I got to call this at some point. I mean, we're having fun, but we got another long day.
We'll be back tomorrow.
We'll be right back here tomorrow. For those of you that have tuned in this long, if you haven't already, please hit that like button on your way out. It's been a really fun show. I agree with Sean Stevenson. Excellent insight from Isaiah. We appreciate Isaiah coming on such short notice. And then, of course, we got to shout out our guy, David Jenkins Jr. for coming on. That was really cool.
Major.
Yeah, it was just an awesome interview, and the honesty he brought. Just a cool thing, I'll share the loudest moment in Mackey Arena one more time for those of you that missed the interview. Please go back and watch the interview. It's worth your time. But this is how we started it with David Jenkins, and this was the loudest recorded moment in Mackey Arena history. That's what we do. That's what we do here at Brags and Stands. We bring you the energy from Mackey Arena. We give you the perspective from the fans in the stands. That's all we are at the end of the day. Yes, we do media stuff, but we are all fans of the Purdue Boilermakers, just like all of you watching and tuning in. We're going to continue to bring great coverage, great interviews, former players, current players, personalities, and media, and everything else in between. Jared Harder, the manager of Purdue, we brought on last week. It was a great interview. Go back and watch that. And even Isaiah is a referee aficionado bringing the thunder here tonight. So that's what we're doing here at Brags and Stands. Please continue, hit that like button, subscribe, keep tuning in. Tune into the post-game show tomorrow night. We're going to be giving all our thoughts, after the Penn State game, as soon as we all get to our stations. And we'll be bringing you more coverage. And of course, the big game on Saturday. Don't want to sell short tomorrow. We'll continue to talk about this tomorrow. But for those of you who might miss tomorrow, make sure you tune in with us on Saturday. We got some big plans, hopefully some special guests for Saturday afternoon after the Purdue IU game. We always are efforting.
I don't know that I know about this.
Yeah,
this is a surprise to everybody.
I'm always thinking of something, but we may have some cool guests that come on as correspondents for our post-game show after the IU game, but we'll have to see about schedule availability. So absolutely boiler up all day long. Thank you again to David Jenkins for coming on and Isaiah for his referee expertise, our new ref correspondent. Joe, any final thoughts? Quick final thoughts, because this is my Midwestern goodbye where we normally put up the wrap it up picture.
Yeah. Great interview. The attesting to the noise. For anybody that doesn't know, I am a student here at Purdue, and so I'm a part of paint crew. It was loud. It was loud. Everybody screaming at the top of their lungs. There's a few times I wasn't like gonna, black out or anything from yelling, but there's a few times where you're yelling and you get dizzy. Like I was dizzy, kind of hold on to the people next to me just for half a second, just to regroup, just because of how much you're yelling. And I think I forget to breathe, to be honest, just because I'm trying to be as loud as possible. So a lot of fun. Glad we were able to get Jenkins on, and I'm excited for the game tomorrow and then talk about it after.
Yeah. And again, you can follow Joe at Joe_Jackson 2210 on Twitter. And then make sure you're following Joe and Aidan with their podcast that they do separately from what we're doing here, called Feed the Post, with Joe Jackson and Aidan Kunst of Purdue.
Yeah, I believe we're having an IU preview episode up tomorrow.
Great.
So be on the lookout.
Are we coming on that, Joe?
Are you looking past Penn State? How dare you?
Oh, no. See, okay. My days don't exist for me here at Purdue, really. In my head, it's Wednesday already. And so I was like, we're going to record tomorrow. We're recording Thursday. We are not recording Wednesday. We're recording Thursday.
Good.
You're good. Okay. I was going to say, don't be looking past Penn State. None of us.
We are not looking. Me and Aidan are not looking past Penn State.
Sure. Where did y'all get the clip of Jenkins hitting the three? All these clips that you see are our clips. These are clips I get, or, whenever Kraig or Joe want to bust out the video camera. Joe's always down in the lower bowl, so he might get some better looks than I do. But all of these shots you see here on our show are things that I've shot on my own from different angles of the stadium, different perspectives. And that's what we do, man. We want, I know a lot of people want us to get to audio platforms, and we're certainly going to do that. I'm going to make Joe help me figure out how to do this. But this is what we want to do. It's, you can listen to it audio wise, but we want you to see it. We want you to feel it. We want you to hear it. We want you to, get to know the interview, and everything else. We want to try to be, a unique podcast that brings a little more than just the four boxes and the person we're talking to. It's like that. We can do that, and we will do that, but we're going to bring other things to the table as well. So we appreciate everyone tuning in once again. This has been a huge week already for us here at Boilers in the Stands, and we got some big things coming up tomorrow, and then Saturday shows coming all the rest of the season. We've got a lot of big guests planned. We just got to try to schedule it and make it all work, and that's what we're going to do for all of you, ladies and gentlemen. So that is officially when we hit the wrap it up moment of this show. This is our wrap it up picture because I don't know ever how to say goodbye to everybody. So good night, everyone. We will see you tomorrow after the Penn State game for our Boilers in the Stand post game show, and make sure you always boiler up. And we're going to finish with an inside look in the tunnel. That's how we're going to end tonight's show. So we're going to give you a real cool perspective of Boilermaker basketball. Have a good night, ladies and gentlemen, and always boiler up.